You're listening to MinerTalk on demand exclusively on 600 ESPN El Paso. Stay up to date with MinerTalk by downloading the free 600 ESPN El Paso mobile app.
It's time for MinerTalk with Adrian Broadus, Sal Montes, and Zay Galindo. MinerTalk is presented by the Oscar Arrieta Agency, Classic Elegance Coaches, the District Pub and Kitchen, Wind Supply El Paso, and New Start Homes. Call into the show at 915-505-6009 or interact with the show at 600 ESPN El Paso on social media. Here's your host, Adrian Broadus.
MinerTalk is live. We're presented by the Oscar Arrieta Agency. Check him out online, OscarArrietaAgency.com. You know Oscar Arrieta as the Hometown Hero Award sponsor every UTEP game. He is the official insurance agent of the UTEP Miners, and he is the proud sponsor here on MinerTalk as we get started. Well, UTEP basketball did what they were supposed to do. A big win against Western New Mexico, 90-62. Not much to take away from this one, Sal. We pretty much prefaced this one after the loss to Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and so now the Miners coming off this one against Western New Mexico. A resounding victory for them. No problem whatsoever. I think Alberto Reta is in the house, but I think he's talking to you instead. But I just want to get things started here on the show. Let's get things started. 915-505-6009. Sal, easy victory for the Miners. Not really much you could take away from this one other than the Miners. I think you took more away from the practice, like Joe Golden was talking about post-game, is these past couple days in practice, that's really where I guess kind of the differences they saw happen within the team.
Yeah, and Joe Golding said it himself in the post game where he said, pregame rather. He said, I'm not worried about or focused on Western New Mexico at all. I'm focused and concerned about our ball movement. So something along the sentiment of that. But yeah, that's what you wanted to see, was the focus on offense and acknowledging a big shortcoming, for this Miners team. Not only this year, but we've seen it with some of his teams, the first 2 years. So to really harp on it this heavy, shows how much he wants this offense to get better, because publicly, we didn't know anything about that last year or the year before, but now it's like, hey, let's get this thing going. So I got to give him credit. However, it is Western New Mexico. Don't get me wrong, but you addressed what you needed to in practice for the big game coming up.
Yeah, I think a lot of this will be repetitive from last time, and I think this one will be a pretty short Miner Talk. I think what we will do is talk a lot about, we'll open up the phone lines if anybody wants to talk football, 915-505-6009 for that. We could definitely get into that conversation. And we can also talk more about basketball if you want to talk about that. However, I'm going to maintain exactly what I maintained against Texas A&M Corpus Christi. You take that loss for what it was, and that was a bad loss, 67-63 last Wednesday. You see how the Miners respond to adversity. That's one of the things that Joe Golding talked about in the postgame, that he wanted to see how they responded after hitting that a little bit of adversity on the season, really for the first time, if you really think about it, Sal. And then on the same note, when you really look at everything right there, how will the Miners respond after this one, heading on the road against Oregon? That task right there seems tough, right? And you know what? I don't really want to judge this basketball team based on the outcome against Oregon, a team that just beat Michigan in overtime 86-83 in a back-and-forth matchup. But I still want to see how they can compete against another Power 5 opponent. They beat Cal earlier this year. So the Miners, let's see how they come out in Eugene on the road. Tough trip for them against a really, really good squad.
Yeah, and I think the biggest takeaway that I'll get from that game will be, were they able to maintain that focus and do what they needed to do offensively? Now, granted, I know they may not be all the way there yet. Don't get me wrong, but is there an improvement nonetheless? And I think that's what fans are really looking for.
915-505-6009 is the number to get into the program. You could chime in on social media, give us a post on Twitter. Also want to mention that we'll get to our hot hand of the game, brought to you by Wind Supply El Paso, and then our Timothy Cantrell player of the game. That's coming up as well here on Miner Talk. Well, Sal, this one, you could look at the highlights. I look at Zid Powell. He had 14.6 rebounds, 3 assists, a look good. 20 minutes of action. Sure, I expect that from him. I also like the performance from Otis Frazier III, the double-double, of course. 11 points, 10 rebounds. And then you got to see a lot of other faces like Garrett Levesque, who played a lot of minutes in this one. You got to see Sebastian Cole almost logged 20 minutes in this one. He buried a three-pointer, and he even contributed with a pair of assists. So, like the play from him. Got to see more of Derek Hamilton. Got to also see more of Elijah Jones. We were wondering if he was in the doghouse after not playing a lot of minutes against a team like Texas A&M Corpus Christi, yet he gets a chance to play in this one. What did you think of that, Sal?
I thought that was cool. That was really huge, especially when you have that hometown connection. It was mentioned a lot, by John and Steve on the broadcast. So
yeah, Donovan Black. That's right.
And also to that point, I think it's a testament to the talent that consistently comes out of El Paso or the surrounding areas as well. Because there's always that, hey, behind the scenes, family members, hey, so and so is going to play at UTEP, and they go and get the whole family out. So
that's always a cool thing.
You got to love that, yeah.
Yeah, Corey Camper Jr. played pretty well, 10 points. He also logged in. He scored on a pair of three-pointers, which is big for him. So good stuff for Corey Camper Jr. and definitely for the Miners, a win that everybody expected. It's not one that we need to break down a lot of different things. It's not one that we need to spend 3 hours on here on Miner Talk. It's not one that we even need to take any real big takeaways from. You want to look at this one as a bridge between the Texas A&M Corpus Christi matchup and, of course, the matchup that they had that they have coming up against Oregon. The one that I continue to circle is Abilene Christian. And Sal, yes. I got a chance to watch them this weekend. I was not impressed in their loss against Stephen F. Austin, 79-74. And yeah, you want to talk about this team? Sure. Okay, go ahead. Convince me why this team is a formidable opponent. Sure. But when we're talking Sunday, December 17th, my expectation for UTEP is to beat that team on the road. They cannot go into Abilene Christian, knowing that that's where Joe Golden came from as well. I mean, that's kind of a moral victory in itself, and you want to do it to boost morale around your club. That's one thing in itself, but you just got to get this win on the road. That's a game I continue to circle, and that's a game right before the West Star Don Haskins Sun Bowl Invitational, by the way.
Yeah, it's a game that the Miners are going to learn a lot, about themselves, and the reason I say that is similar to UTEP. We've seen the highs and we've seen the lows. So the fans for the Wildcats of ACU, they're saying the exact same thing. Hey, this team can be that team that beat Oklahoma State, or hey, we've seen the brutal stretch that they've been on. What are they going to be? So really two teams I think that are in a similar boat. I don't want to say the exact same boat. I think the Miners are better for sure, but it is going to be a big one, especially when the Miners are coming off of a game like the one against Oregon, because we saw what happened on the road trip. Yeah, you beat Cal, but when you lose a game and you lose it poorly, are you going to follow it up with another one? So not saying they're going to lose like that to Oregon. I'm just saying that game can also dictate how they'll play that one too.
Yeah, and they've got to come out at least motivated and inspired and trying to win that game on the road. I've liked this team in spurts when they play groups that are better on paper than them. So let's see what they can do against Oregon come Saturday. That should be a really interesting matchup on the road against Oregon in Eugene. It's a 7 o'clock local tip-off, and it's on the Pac-12 network. By the way, Pac-12 network, very inaccessible. So sorry for those out there. Even those who usually join us out at the District West, they don't even have that channel. The Pac-12 network, it's just a tough one to get. Unless you have certain streaming channels readily available to you, it's a tough one to get out there. So maybe plan accordingly if you want to watch some UTEP Oregon this weekend. All right, Sal, let's get to the meat and potatoes of all of this. And thanks to Bring Back Miner Rush, who said the same thing. All right, good Miner, or easy win for UTEP basketball. Let's get to the meat and potatoes of the day. And he says indeed. He can't wait.
Please,
let's do it. UTEP football hires Scotty Walden. He is their 27th head coach. And by the way, Sal, good timing for this. In fact, Scotty Walden just posted on social media, on Twitter right now, that like his goodbye with Austin Peay. I'll read it to you. So then we could break this down. We could talk about the hire in total. We could talk about this whole weekend, which was a complete fiasco and carousel in itself. Okay, here we go. This is from head coach Scotty Walden to Austin Peay. I write this today with a heavy heart. My family and I are embarking on a new journey that will take us from Clarksville and Austin Peay. Callie, Luca, and I cannot thank Montgomery County and Clarksville, Tennessee enough. You've welcomed us with open arms since day one and have been so great to my family. We love this town and the people in it. Thanks for supporting our efforts to develop a championship program on and off the field. My family and I are so appreciative of our players and their parents. This team inspired myself and my family every time we stepped on the field because of their heart. We are so proud of the players that helped us build the program to deliver championships on and off the field. Lastly, we are especially grateful to Gerald Harrison, Dr. Licardi, and our donor base for their unwavering belief and support. Austin Peay is special because of their special leadership that is in place. Thank you for believing in the vision of Austin Peay football, supporting our program, and for loving our family through the ups and downs. My heart is full with love and joy from our memories here at Austin Peay. We have made great relationships that will last a lifetime. Thank you for the amazing memories that my family and all of us will always have from Austin Peay in Clarksville, Tennessee. God bless, and always, let's go Peay. And that's coming from new UTEP head coach Scotty Walden, who, by the way, was named and announced today. I'll take everybody through the weekend and how I saw it, and then Sal, you tell me how you saw everything unfold, and then we'll get into then we'll actually talk about Scotty Walden himself a little bit more. But let's talk about the weekend itself, okay? So going into Friday, there's all sorts of rumors about 4 finalists that are being named, okay? It's Eric Price, the former offensive coordinator, former NFL offensive analyst with the Jacksonville Jaguars. You name it. He was a part of these different organizations. Plus, on top of all of that, he had, like I mentioned, spent some time here at UTEP in the past. Then you had Brennan Marion, UNLV offensive coordinator, coming off a Mountain West championship appearance in which they only scored 13 points offensively. It was like a 40-20 game when it was all said and done. And I really didn't think UNLV was as talented as Boise State, yet they tried to hang in there in that game. Second half got a little out of hand, but nonetheless, playing in the Mountain West championship game, and that's Brennan Marion, the offensive coordinator for UNLV. Scotty Walden, who popped up late last week, and we were surprised to hear this name. When I first heard this name come across, I guess, kind of my mentions, I thought, no, I would be surprised if UTEP went this route. And then the more I dug into him, the more I realized, wow, this guy can build cultures. This guy has an identity. This guy already calls his own offense, which is similar to Dana Dimmel, and a lot of Miner fans will admit that, but he's young and innovative. He's 34 years old. He's energetic. He's only the second youngest coach in FBS across the board, second only to the Arizona State head coach over there. And then I look at all these things. I put it all together, and I think to myself, interesting name right there. Kenny Perry was the other name that emerged over the weekend, the Texas Tech associate head coach, and known for what he could do in recruiting. I'll say all of this to say that we had our finalists. We did our rankings and all that kind of stuff. Sal, you and I had the exact same list. It was Marion number 1. It was Walden number 2. It was Perry 3, and then it was Eric Price 4. Zay Galindo, who's not here, he's back at home, but he'll join us this weekend. He had the almost kind of the same list, but he had Marion 1, and then he had Walden actually 3. He had Perry number 2, and he had Price number 4. The fifth name that emerged over the weekend was Zach Kitley. It was reported the Texas Tech offensive coordinator. He's somebody who is known for what he can do with quarterbacks, but he's worked primarily with guys like Bailey Zappi through his time at Houston Baptist, then Western Kentucky, and then, of course, Zach Kitley most recently being at Texas Tech as their offensive coordinator under Joey McGuire. So that's a name that we didn't think was going to be a finalist, but interviewed for the job when it was all said and done, which was real interesting in itself. All right. Saturday, I thought there was a little momentum for Perry. I thought he started to gain a little bit of steam. Then comes Sunday. Marion, the only one to interview on Sunday and the only one to do it in El Paso. Sal, at this point, Sunday evening, I was ready to start hitting the drafts on our 600 ESPN El Paso website and start drafting an article just in case Marion was named the head coach. I just thought it was him at that point on Sunday.
Yeah, and the one factor, I guess, guess in that argument that played the biggest in my mind was he actually came to El Paso. How many of these guys got to tour the facilities? Now I get it. It's after the regular season. Guys are busy recruiting if they're not, preparing for a bowl game or potential bowl game at that moment, right? I was thinking, hey, this is huge. He's gotten to see the facilities, once as a coach, really, and then the second go round, potentially here as a candidate. Now, I don't know if he toured the facilities or not.
Yeah.
These are just ideas.
So,
but that is exactly what went into my mind. Like, he has, UTEP right in front of him. So that was something that I was really high on.
Yeah, I would say this. It's interesting, the tour of the facility side of it. I was doing some digging on this part of it, Sal, and from everything that I've heard, I don't think he actually did, but there's been a lot of conflicting things. How about this, Sal? You dipped your toe a little bit into the sources said and sources this weekend. What was that like? We were texting back and forth all weekend. I felt like I was on the phone like crazy all weekend long.
It was back and forth. It's funny because I think we both kind of had, similar, anxiousness towards it, like, hey man, what do you know? Hey, what do you know? So it was fun, really, to do a deep dive and do research, send some messages, reach out to people that that have ties to UTEP in one way or another. So that was exciting, and I think the fun part was when I would tell you something that you didn't know, and then you would tell me something that I didn't know. So it was great, man. Tag teaming.
Yeah, it definitely was. It was a lot of fun. Shout out to all our great contacts and sources that we'll never reveal.
Never.
And shout out to the fact that we didn't really release a lot of this stuff. We kept quiet on a lot of this stuff. We were asked to. We were, maybe we had a chance to talk to some of the candidates. Maybe we had a chance to talk to some people very close to some of the candidates. And our gift to those people was we weren't going to burn them. We were going to be as nice to them as possible and as gracious as we could for them just trusting us with this information. And I think we wanted to speak from a more educated perspective. That's the reason. We didn't want to break any news. I mean, hey, look, if we wanted to break some news, sure, that would have been great, but we know how this business works. It's going to be a national guy. It's going to be early in the morning, and it's going to be confirmed first by somebody outside of UTEP versus inside UTEP. It's usually how these things kind of happen. So I was okay with that, but I wanted to speak about all this stuff in an educated manner, and I think that's what we can do right now and start talking a little bit more about Scotty Walden here, Sal.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun looking down, all of the accomplishments, reeling it off, and even some local ties, Sul Ross State aside, obviously that's down the road in Alpine, the Big Bend area, but guys that he's recruited here in El Paso, and even players tweeting out at him as well. I mean, this is a guy who's really hip with the young guys. It's weird. I feel old saying that he's hip with the young guys.
There you go.
But I mean, this guy's he's got some swag to him. So looking forward to seeing how the preparation really for this football season is going to be done.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have asked me, like, what are my thoughts on this? What do you think? Is this a good hire? You know what? This is my second option. So my number one option was Brendan Marion, and I maintain that. And there's people who get paid a lot more than us here on this show to make these big decisions at UTEP, which then turn into multi-million-dollar contracts. And so they felt like Walden was the guy. The response was that his energy is off the charts. And when I asked, hey, is it comparable to like a Joe Golding? They were like, no, I mean, better, like more energetic, more intense, more just out there. And you know what? I don't know if that's true. I would love to meet Scotty Walden here coming up on Wednesday and see what kind of vibe that he gives me. And I have a lot of questions for the coaching staff. I have a lot of questions for the direction. I think a lot of those questions will be answered by his initial press conference, and he's going to try to excite El Paso. But Sal, I think what would be helpful for us right now is to go back and forth on wish lists. Like, if you had to talk about the wish list and the priority number one, day one, if you're Scotty Walden or if you're on his advisory committee and you say, hey, on day one, you've got to do this. What does day one look like for Scotty Walden at UTEP?
So let me ask you this before I answer. So he's going out in day one. does he have help to multitask, or just you can only focus on one thing?
Let's do one thing right now. We'll go back and forth. That's why it'll be like a wish list, but we'll kind of go back and forth on this. So you give me the number one priority right now.
Recruiting, and that includes the transfer portal.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So number one, UTEP has 0 recruits in the early recruiting class. The early recruiting day where they actually announce your early recruiting signees is December 20th, 16 days away. I said this earlier today. I'll say it again. That's rapidly approaching. That's basically tomorrow. And UTEP, like you said, Sal, has to look at recruiting. Number one, I agree with that completely. Number one has to be Scotty. Sell me on Scotty Walden. Sell me on this program for these different recruits out there. Whether you're a player that's on the team and has hit the portal, I think those players are very important to try and re-recruit. And I think recruiting also involves his current players. I mean, you look at their quarterback. Yeah. He's a grad transfer. He's not going to have another year of eligibility. But you have a lot of other players across that roster. Could they join Coach Walden here at UTEP and be transfers from the FCS level to the FBS level? How does he evaluate things like that? And then if it's not that route, which route does he take? Does he go the junior college route? Does he want to build this with high school guys? Does he prioritize Division I transfers and pretty much promises immediate playing time? What is the philosophy behind immediate recruiting, which is desperately needed at UTEP football?
Exactly. And not only that, but can you get guys who fit the system that you want to bring in right away? You know, fans don't want to see, a 2-3 year project to see that offense looking right. If you're an offensive-minded guy, they're going to expect you to drop, X amount of points early on. Now, let's be realistic. I understand there's some time that's needed to work on it, but it should look somewhat coherent and cohesive between them all on the field, early on in the year.
Yeah, I would also say this when it comes to UTEP and recruiting, Sal. If you put that number one, maybe recruiting the first thing and the first day looks like, hey, let's have a team meeting. Anybody who wants to come is welcome from this past team. Anybody who wants to air out frustrations, go ahead. But I'm going to tell you how it is. And if you want to be a part of it, great. If you don't want to be a part of it, well, you know what? That's just not going to be the case of you actually being here and stuff like that. So I wonder how this is all going to kind of go when it's all said and done. And yeah, man, I want, from their perspective, from the coaching perspective, I want them to prioritize also trying to re-recruit some of the players that are on this roster. I feel like they have a lot of talent. All right, Sal, number 2 on the wish list for UTEP football. What goes in number 2 right after recruiting? Is it staff building? Is it just assemble your staff right away? Because I actually think I would prioritize recruiting ahead of building my staff. I think I'll build my staff over the next X weeks. But if you're telling me I'm taking over a program that is coming off a 3-9 season and as uninspired as they were to close out the season, I want to know what kind of players are going to be in the mix.
You know what? I gotta go a different route.
Okay.
Because if the rumors are true of the personality being the main reason why he got the job, now you got to sell the city and build that NIL fund. That would be my number 2.
Oh, man, sell off the top rope. But it's a great prioritization. Yeah, let's go with number 2, NIL. How important is that? It could be the lifeblood. If we talk about recruiting being atop the priority charts, then you got to also emphasize NIL and how you get those recruits. So
exactly. No, and you're absolutely right, because there's a common saying, right? When a place is used as a stepping stone, and we'll use this as an example, right? Coaches coming to UTEP to parlay that into a bigger gig. The common quote is, leave a place better than you found it.
There you go.
At this point, and we just got to be real, doesn't matter how many games are won, if there's no NIL built, you really didn't do too much.
You know what?
In this day and age of college football.
Think about it from this perspective. Yeah, it is sad, because you look all across college football and everybody else has one, and everybody else here, as far as UTEP fans, all they want to do is compare themselves as UTEP fans to every other fan base. And hey, if NMSU has one, why doesn't UTEP have one? If New Mexico has one, why doesn't UTEP have one? That's the questions from a lot of different fans out there. So in your order of priority, you might have number 1, recruiting. Go out, recruit the guys. Go ahead, Scotty Walden. You're going to make the big bucks. You go out. You have that energy early on and recruit the guys, whether they're on this current roster, on your previous roster, in the transfer portal, in the JUCO ranks, whatever it might be. That is so important. As far as NIL goes, yeah, I'm with that 100%. And in fact, I've heard behind the scenes they're trying to put something together for NIL. How I guess what kind of substance that has, that's left to be questioned. I think we could still start to question things like that. What's next for NIL? How can they establish a collective? And I'm not saying it's a difference maker for men's basketball, but it can be. I mean, think about it. Men's basketball has benefited off their own minor collective that they're using for NIL, and they probably even need more. I bet you, you know what? Absolutely. I bet you if this Yeti was full of truth serum right here, and I gave this to Joe Golding and asked him to sip on it real quick and give me the truth, give me the facts, and I asked him, hey, Coach, if you all could use a little bit more in your NIL collective, how helpful would that be? He probably would tell you, yeah, it's extremely helpful. The more the merrier. The more resources that you can use and tap into for NIL, the better your recruiting goes. Those two kind of work hand in hand nowadays. And yeah, some people might shrug this off and say, how long can you guys talk about this? But we're going to still smash our hands on the table until things change and people understand how important this is until it actually happens, because it's a priority. It has to be.
You look across college athletics, and a big reason why some of these G4 schools, if you want to put it that way, G4, G5, are able to get the talent that they get is because of their NIL deals. And I get it. Not every player out there is going to be money driven. However, if you're not going to have an NIL or have something to offer in terms of funds to a player, your talent pool extremely diminishes. You're going to look for diamonds in the rough and whatnot. But guess what? There's recruiters at just about every school that keens in on diamonds in the rough as well. So you're at a severe disadvantage with that one. Look at I'll give another quick example. It didn't work out season-wise, but roster-wise, it was one of the best in Conference USA. Just think of Western Kentucky basketball not too long ago. Didn't they have Demarion Sharp? They had a Mr. Kentucky or two Mr. Kentuckys on their roster.
How about Charles Bassey, huh? Was he on that squad?
I don't think so. I think that was before. Maybe. Okay. I can't remember when NIL came into play, but I know it was Sharp. He was the center, the 7-foot something guy, the really tall
I remember
one.
Sharp.
So, but the point is, if you have an NIL, you have a better chance to have more talent on your roster.
Yeah, that's bottom line. 915-505-6009 if you'd like to weigh in. We got to Alberto in just a second here. He's in our studio as well. Sal, I want to go to number 3. Is number 3 recruiting is that the third thing that he does? I'm sorry, not recruiting, but recruiting a staff, assembling a staff, and having some guys in place to start taking over all the different position groups.
Yeah, it has to be, because at this point you're expending so much energy, on the road trying to get guys, and also selling yourself on El Paso. Now get some guys behind you to help do the same thing.
Okay, so let's talk the staff, because this part in itself is interesting. I was evaluating the Austin Peay coaching staff, and without having to do too much digging, you can just see these guys unfortunately don't have the experience, in my perspective, to make that jump from FCS to FBS. A lot of those guys on that coaching staff, and that's okay. I mean, hey, look, they're at the FCS level, they're doing what they're doing over there, and they're having success. Austin Peay's a winning program, so they're position coaches for a winning program at the FCS level. Not a bad life. That's not what I'm not trying to knock these guys, but what I'm saying is, if Scotty Walden wants to bring anybody over, the ones that I will accept and I'll be like, all right, that's probably the right move, is the offensive guys. I mean, you're talking about a top 15 offense across FCS. You're talking about a top 10 scoring offense. They almost averaged 40 points a game that they were putting up this past season in FCS. And you're talking about the bread and butter of Scotty Walden, which is his offense, high-powered, energetic, throwing all over the place, and just kind of going up and down. But with that being said, Sal, maybe my first reservations come from this coaching staff will be, where do they hire defensively, and how do they prioritize that defensive coordinator role? I heard earlier on Sports Talk talking about, hey, could they retain guys on this current staff like Bradley Dale Pivito? Maybe somebody like Bradley Dale Pivito, but not necessarily Bradley Dale Pivito. You don't, in my opinion, when you need a culture change and when you need a whole rebranding and reestablishing of your program, you don't retain anybody from that previous staff and you move forward with a whole new staff. That's kind of the bottom. That's how I look at this job and this hiring. If you got this job, Scotty Walden, it's up to you to assemble the right coaching staff that you can put in place, and it's up to you to put that right defensive coordinator. We're talking all about how he can prioritize offense, but defensively, that has to be a priority for him.
No, it definitely does, especially the pace that his offense plays at. They get extra possessions, but that only means, more series that the defense has to be on the other side of the, or actually on the field for. So, I mean, you got to give something to take something and vice versa.
No, most definitely. We'll bring in our third member of our team, Alberto Reta, who is here in our studios. Alberto, you tell me your instant reactions when Scotty Walden was hired. What did you really think about this hire when it was all said and done?
I was really surprised. I really thought Marion had the better chance, especially with him coming to the city. I really thought he was the guy. But just touching up on your point about what's most important, I was really thinking my most important thing for Scotty Walden is get the cash flowing, both for NIL and for everything else. So you need donations in general. I mean, your NIL is next to nothing, but so is with this new hiring of the coach, facilities got brought up. And the state of the facilities and how stuff hasn't been upgraded and that's not inherently false. So that to me is more important. Generating donations, generating this NIL deals to get going, because that recruiting will fall in place. If you don't have the money right now, for example, in my opinion, to retain guys that were in your city. You were saying, didn't you've been covering Deion Hankins, I believe, since he was 16.
Correct.
And it's we have not, as a city, we haven't been able to retain him. I count myself in that as we, but the city, the fans of Miners, the Miner fans haven't donated enough money or offered enough money for any of these guys to be oh, maybe I'll stay. And even money might not resolve this problem. So that's what scares me the most. The facilities that a lot of people are saying aren't good. I love every single facility at UTEP, and I think they're great. But a lot of people say, well, we need a lot of stuff and we do. When you compare the stuff that Texas Tech has, Texas has, all these other schools in Texas, UTEP does not have these things. So I think that's what Walden has to work towards, getting the money flowing in the city. The money's here. It's just about getting it flowing and getting it in the right place.
Yeah, it's a good priority to have, number one. And I think how he does that is exciting people, getting his energy out there and stuff like that. Now, you touched on the facilities. I think, number one, if I had a wish list on the facility side of things, it's the dungeon that is that locker room. Just absolutely atrocious. It's an embarrassment when Notre Dame is going to come here on December 29th and play and suit out in that locker room. I'm embarrassed for them because that's just unacceptable. At any Division I FBS level, that locker room is unacceptable, and I'll stand on that. And I'll also say this: I hold UTEP to a high standard. Do I understand that things are what they are for resources? Yes, of course. I've been covering this team since 2015 for both men's basketball and football pretty regularly. But what I also can understand, and I can see from a realistic point, is no. Maybe UTEP will not be to the Texas Tech standards or the Texas standards ever at any point. But can they be on the same level as other people across Conference USA? You'd hope for that, because if not, they're not going to ever, all those fantasies about UTEP going to the Mountain West, all that kind of stuff, forget about that.
You know, it's so funny. I hear this, to me, inconsiderate, but the most garbage stat, or one of the most garbage stats out there, and that's the UTEP leads Conference USA in home attendance. But they have some of the very worst facilities in Conference USA. So that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, make that make sense. Hey, Cesar Cubillos checks in. Adrian has gotten this song stuck in my head after reading that goodbye post from our new coach. He sent the Monkeys, The Last Train to Clarksville. There you go. Good stuff, man. This is from Bring Back Minor Rush. Good point about the kids who enter the portal. Would those kids be allowed at his team meeting? Hashtag MinerTalk. That's a great question. I don't know. There are some coaches who have a philosophy. If you hit the portal, if you're not with us, you're against us. So I've heard that from other coaches, not here at UTEP, but I've heard that at other places. Now, at the same time, this is UTEP, and you have to understand where they're coming from. And so UTEP might not necessarily have to or be in the position, right, where they will have a, what's it called? Be in the place where they can actually say no and turn these guys down.
I don't like that at all.
Okay,
and
you don't like it?
The reason I don't like that is because coaches are allowed to, basically enter the professional transfer portal. There's going to be a lot of coordinators, a lot of head coaches that are going to be allowed to return to their university because the job they wanted was not offered because they didn't get it. So to say, if that's the case, administration should be, hey, once you submit a resume to another school, that's it, we're done. But that doesn't happen. So how come for a player, they can't, test the waters a bit and then decide to come back?
Yeah, it's a really good question. 915-505-6009. I'm totally with you. It's hypocrisy, Sal. And I'm the kind of guy who sides with the players, knowing that the coaches themselves have a lot of power. So let's go back to the phones. Let's welcome on Ronnie for the first time tonight, 915-505-6009. Ronnie, good evening, man. What's happening?
What's happening?
Hey, we finally have a UTEP football coach to talk about here on this show. What do you think about it?
Yes, before I go into that, Sal, that's not how that works. When you're an assistant coach or you're a coach and you want a new job, you don't submit anything, my man. Your representation, your agent reaches out to who's running the search.
Hey, tell that to Jerry Kill, right, who does not have representation, huh? Tell that to Jerry Kill, though.
Interest, and guys kind of figure out there's a similar interest, and then you kind of piggyback it from there or whatever. So you're with your job, you're with your team. They kind of know, your head coach, AD, kind of know what's going on, but you don't really do any of that yourself. You kind of stay locked in, just to clarify how that works or whatever.
Okay, so tell us what you think.
Kill got with somebody to reach out to Mario to make sure there was, or one way or another, they have a mutual mediator. This is the perfect hire for UTEP. I said it all along that the most important thing was to get someone that had head coaching experience and had some success in that driver's seat. I know that you and a lot of people wanted Marion, and I'm sure he'll be a fantastic coach one day, but you have to understand what it is that UTEP is now and their window and what they need to become, because you can't let Liberty just have a stranglehold on the league, right? Who has a seasoned head coach, so you have to look around also. And here's another thing that you guys need to understand too. When New Mexico State goes and takes Kill and they win 10 games, you're not in a situation where you can wait on a coordinator to kind of grow into a head coach. Like, you have to get a head coach's success. You have no choice but to follow the blueprint that your neighbor up the road followed. You have no choice, because if you don't and it doesn't work out, or the coordinator that you want, whatever, right? Just a multitude of things happen and it doesn't happen. With this new Conference USA, with New Mexico State rising to the top, Liberty being at the top, you're just going to set yourself so far back so quickly, and you have no choice. You have to get a guy that had head coaching experience. I believe this was the right guy. His path was almost identical to Joe Golden. When you look at it, he takes a school that's, transitioning or hasn't quite transitioned. They played some of the big boys. This season alone, they played at Tennessee. They scored 13. They held them to 30 points, early in the season. Last year, 2 years ago, I think they played Bama. Now, they didn't do well in the game, but, hey, the fact that they played Bama and get those types of experience, and just to learn those reps as a coach and what it looks like and what it feels like, that's what you needed at UTEP, man. You didn't need to go and get another coordinator that was coming from Houston or wherever. By the way, that's what they did with Daniel Dillon in Houston. They've been good for 40 years. The school's in the hood, and nobody cares about football in Houston. It is what it is, right? You couldn't follow the same formula that got you into this situation. You got to do something different. If you look at center, I'm tough on center, but I want to give center some props. His last three coaching hires have all been good: men's basketball, women's basketball, and men's football. I think those are really three solid hires by center. I think he did a really good job. So, Jim, if you're listening, my hat's off to you. I think the fan base should be excited about this. If nothing else, they should at least give this guy the opportunity to prove that he wasn't the guy. They should at least walk in with open arms, because all season long for the last 2 years, me and everybody else have just complained about Demo. And now that he's gone, you can't tear the new guy down before he even gets started. If you can't do anything, then just keep your mouth shut and at least welcome the guy. You know, you have to spend your money, but at least give the guy an opportunity, because for 2 seasons, all we wanted was to get rid of Dimel. Well, guess what? We did that at a price. So now you have to at least give the new staff, the new individual, the opportunity to prove themselves. You know, it doesn't cost you anything to just be quiet and just sit back and see. It costs you absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Ronnie, and I appreciate the phone call, man. It's great to get your points on this because, you know what, I thought I saw it on social media initially when it was hired. There were some people, I think the response, and Adrian at Enemy Win 3 also commented on this, to your point, Ronnie. He was like, I know Scotty Walden was an unpopular pick with UTEP fans, but I hope fans give him a chance. I don't think so. I think it was either split. I think maybe you could even say 60% or 70% popular with fan base out there. Yeah, there's a 30%, maybe a 35% of the fans who were a little bit confused. They wanted Marion, they wanted other guys, or whatever it may be. They had their own ideas how this one should have wrapped up. But to all of those things, I would just say this. When Dana Dimel was initially hired as UTEP's head coach, a lot of people were initially bewildered by that hire. They were wondering, why him? What happened there? He didn't have any head coaching experience recently at the time, and he had a lot of success at Kansas State, but that finalist pool that UTEP had before before Dana Dimel was hired maybe wasn't necessarily as good as it was right now. So yeah, I'm with Ronnie, because all that fans wanted here on this show, forget 2 seasons ago, you can go 3 seasons ago when they were actually good and they had a winning season, Sal. We were on those shows. We heard after the New Mexico Bowl game, fans calling for Dana Dimel's head. They did not want him as the coach after that loss. They felt like they peaked and they would not go any further. So people had red flags even when they won and even when they had success. So for almost 3 seasons now, fans have been complaining about the coach and wanting him out.
And I think after that game, it wasn't necessarily just the bowl game. You look at what led up to it, and they'd been on a really big downward spiral, up to that point. That was kind of like the icing on the cake. And the frustrating part was they had a real shot in that game, but you got to see remnants, in a couple of series that showed the bad flashes of the Miners. So I think it was basically just everything erupting into one.
Yeah, and I think that all of that, when you put it all together, you understand, hey, look, Jim Center had to be the guy, and this athletic department had to be the group who went out and they, said that enough is enough. They did not want to proceed. They were going to work out the buyout, whatever that ends up being, and then move forward with a new coach. And that's what they're doing here in Scotty Walden. So for Ronnie, he says give him a chance. At least for fans out there who might be skeptical, who might have reservations, understand this. UTEP was in 2 months ago. You asked the same question. What fans would give for a new head coach? Fans would do a lot, and they would be really fired up about it. So there you go. Hey, let's do this. Let's pause 10 seconds for station identification. Then we'll take a break as well. When we come back, we're going to do awards, and we're going to start winding things down here on MinerTalk. If you have Scotty Walden thoughts, give us a call, 915-505-6009. If you have a wish list, we chimed in on like top 3 wishes that we want this program to do kind of on day one. Send it our way. I think we're going to know a lot more about the coaching staff, their priorities by Wednesday, and I think we'll have a lot of takeaways after that. But before we get to that, let's continue here on MinerTalk. Let's pause 10 seconds for station identification. Then we'll take a break. We'll be back with more in a moment. Stay with us as MinerTalk continues. Presented by the Oscar Arieta Agency. Hot Hand of the Game brought to you by Win Supply El Paso, and Player of the Game thanks to Timothy Cantrell coming up next on 600 ESPN El Paso.
Streaming worldwide through the 600 ESPN El Paso mobile app. 600 ESPN El Paso is KROD El Paso, a Town Square media station.
600 ESPN El Paso.
All right, welcome back. MinerTalk continues, presented by the Oscar Arieta Agency. If you want to duck in a late call, give us a call, 915-505-6009. That's the telephone number. 600 ESPN El Paso on Twitter and 600 ESPN El Paso on our free mobile app. Adrian sends us our way. He sends a couple posts. All right, number one, a viable NIL collective it just isn't realistic here at UTEP. Dimmo proved that we can recruit talent through predominantly junior college. I'll say this, say that the viable NIL collective isn't realistic, just look at men's basketball, man. They did it. UTEP football could do it too. Even if it was just a retention NIL collective to keep guys to stay at UTEP, I think that's realistic. I really do. And I'm saying this as a thought, but I'm basing my thought on a lot of facts and a lot of the sources and people that I've talked with about their plans and what they want to do within this university. So I don't think they're too far off from this. I think it's not unrealistic, but I do think it will take time, and once it happens, it will help out the football team in a big way. He follows it up by saying this, Adrian, your poll showed that Scotty only got 10% of the vote. Hey, man, I'm going to give you a lot of credit, Adrian at Enemy Win 3. You wanted Scotty Walden. You want some props, and I'll give it to you because he was your number one guy. Yeah, fans said 10% of the vote, sure, which could indicate that he was not necessarily a popular choice. But I would say that when he was initially announced, it wasn't like fans were like, wow, here we go, that kind of thing. If you want to say that fans were a little underwhelmed by it, okay, sure. Let's talk after Wednesday and see if fans change their mind after the press conference. I hear that he will simply win you over based on what he could deliver in a press conference setting. So let's see how that goes on Wednesday. This coming in from Felipe Candelaria Jr. I say, why not? Maybe this coach will have a change of heart, and maybe some of the players will have a change of heart and stay with the team after speaking to their new head coach. That's a good question. I mean, a good point right there. Maybe that's the case. Maybe some of them will have a change of heart when it's all said and done. This coming in, I already read this one from Caesar, so good stuff, Caesar. Actually, this one is a different one on basketball. This is from Caesar Cubillos. It felt like UTEP was taking on Burgess High School. I hope UTEP can gain momentum from the tournament in 2 weeks. I love Zid Powell's swagger. That dunk belongs on a basketball card. See everyone on volleyball on Wednesday. #MinerTalk. Thanks, Caesar. Good stuff, man. Yeah, that dunk was awesome. A posterized dunk by Zid Powell. That was fantastic stuff. Let's get out to Mike from Austin. I thought we were going to miss him tonight, but he ends up calling in. Game number 9. You're 9 for 9, Mike. Great to hear from you. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going? I really don't have much to say that you all haven't covered, so we'll just, especially on the basketball side, not a lot to learn from this game. But football, so I'll just throw a question out at you all, and then I'll hang up and hear what you all have to say.
Okay.
Is there anybody from Austin Peay that we should be interested in coach trying to bring over? I've heard some stuff about the quarterback. I've heard some stuff about their running back and a couple of, I think, defensive backs. But just I don't know enough about him or his program to be able to give an opinion. So I was just trying to throw something out at you.
Yeah, good stuff. And hey, I appreciate it, Mike. It's always great to hear from you, even if it's brief. So I appreciate you chiming in as always. Let's talk about roster, okay? Because you brought up the quarterback, and that's the first position I looked up. Just because, that's kind of your staple of your program. So you always wanted to see what kind of quarterback they're going to bring in or what kind of guy that they have on their roster. Well, Austin P, by the way, it's P, not Pay. It's P. They had a quarterback who is a graduate student. He does not have another year of eligibility. He actually came from Middle Tennessee, so he went from the FBS down to the FCS so he could get some more experience. Their defensive coordinator was J.J. Clark. He also coached safeties for them, and like you heard from some of I think it was Ronnie who maybe mentioned it, they like to play that aggressive style of defense. They like to force turnovers and stuff like that. J.J. Clark is known for his experience as a defensive coordinator at the NAIA level. He was promoted to the defensive coordinator this past year for Austin Peay. I don't expect them to go defense if they went anybody, but you could maybe look at Jared Kastner. He was their co-offensive coordinator, and in fact, he went to Houston. He was at Houston Christian when they did have Bailey Zappi on their team, so that's somebody who maybe they decide to bring over. He also graduated from Texas Tech. He is a run game coordinator, so he specializes in the run. So if you want to look at somebody, maybe look at Jared Kastner, who is their co-offensive coordinator and also coaches their offensive line. Now, another one is Lanier Sampson. He is another co-offensive coordinator, and he's their wide receivers coach. He was their passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach last year. Then he was promoted to co-offensive coordinator this past year. He has been to places like Syracuse, which is interesting, under Dino Babers, and also Central Florida. He also coached at McNeese State, Missouri State, Syracuse as well, and played professionally as an undrafted free agent for the Indianapolis Colts. Played collegiately at Baylor. So that could be a name, Sal, that you see join him here at UTEP. Lanier Sampson, who is their co-offensive coordinator and does have that Power 5 experience at Syracuse, granted, but maybe they look at his experience and think they could bring him over.
You know what? That's a really great point. And, this being the first year really, as a full-time, I don't want to say, his first time, but as a full-time head coach at the, at the FBS level, so to speak, you can have somebody who could kind of, show you the ropes. And also, too, when he did it, that was around the COVID era, so it's not a regular, normal college football season. So there's that. But
good point.
As far as players go, I was looking up a couple of guys, and one of the players just announced their intent to hit the transfer portal, and that was leading wide receiver Trey Shackelford. He's a junior. And looked up a couple of other guys, and Sam Howard, a linebacker, he's a junior. He was their leading tackler, and they have Xavier Smith, the defensive back. He's a redshirt freshman who was their third leading tackler as well. I'm sure there's other guys, to look down. I'm not saying those last two names that I mentioned are in the portal or not. I haven't looked it up, but might be something to watch to see if that move to the Sun City is there in the future.
Yeah, good point. And I'm glad you highlighted a couple position groups. Wide receiver, linebacker, those are some names that you're finding in the portal right there. If you guys find any other ones, please let me know. We'd be happy to talk about those. I want to talk about two other things for the staffing side of it, okay? Number one, everybody wants to know, will this staff recruit local? Well, they've established a pipeline with some El Paso players here recently with Austin Peay. They actually had Hatib Lyles, who was Deion Hankins' teammate out at Parkland. He was a graduate transfer, played his final year of college eligibility this past season for the Governors. He does not have another year of eligibility, but he would be a great grad transfer if that actually worked out right. But you could also look at him recruiting. I'm talking about Scotty Walden, currently recruiting some El Pasoans like Evan Minhades, the quarterback out at Eastwood. So there you go. There's a little local connection right there. I'll also say this. I like this, Sal. They had at Austin Peay, and I'd expect if Scotty Walden pitched this to UTEP, they would have the position at UTEP. It's called a general manager, NFL, CFL, XFL, and USFL liaison. Okay, so they had this position. Buddy Odell had this position out at Austin Peay. He had worked for 3 professional football teams like the Packers, Ravens, and the Salt Lake City Stallions as a equipment intern. He helped with defensive line. He was an equipment assistant, front office assistant, and worked in scouting groups as well. But this is a guy who serves as a liaison for players to try to get into the league or players to even have opportunities. Sal, this is, for me, a big priority for UTEP in the future. They only have 4 active UTEP alumni in the NFL right now. There needs to be more players playing on Sundays.
Yeah, and those connections, to be consistent and constant, not just really relying on one guy, so to speak. I know that he would have that role, or he has that role where he's at now. I'm thinking too far ahead. No, he has that role now, but also also takes that responsibility off of some of the coaches, so they can game plan more and prepare for whoever it is they have coming up, or to help develop their guys. So that's next level. I hadn't think of that.
They had a football data analyst. There you go. So they like their advanced analytics numbers. That guy probably spends a lot of time on Pro Football Focus. They're an advanced group. They are a 2023 group. So that's something good. As far as recruiting coordinators go, they've got somebody who's John Lang. He was in his first season as a recruiting coordinator. I'm not sure if they would like to bring this guy with them, but I would say that when you talk about bringing staff over, maybe you look at the offense for Austin Peay, and that's where it starts and ends. If you want to go recruiting coordinator, go outside of that program. Find somebody who's recruiting well, and somebody who knows JUCO pipelines that you could tap into. If you need to bring in an NFL and professional football liaison, great. That would be a priority for me. I think that's a big thing for UTEP to try to do. And then on the last note, if they wanted to go out and get a data analyst, I think that would just show UTEP's committed into the 2023 era and the future era of football, and how they prioritize advanced analytics, and how maybe advanced analytics can actually help them out, Sal, game plan and be better in the long run.
Well, it's the new age of sports, right? Not just in football, but pretty much every sport out there. There's an extra position. If we want to put, I guess, an idea or a parallel to it, it reminds me of like Moneyball.
There you go. I like it.
Of that movie, when they had the statistician, so to speak, come out and shape up what the team was going to do. So that's where we're at now with so many new resources.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how basketball is seen nowadays too. So you even tap into basketball, and hey, we reference Ken Palm all the time, the advanced analytics of basketball. That's just where sports are nowadays. Joe Chacon on Twitter. Ain't nothing like a late Monday night Miner Talk. I'm hoping Austin Peay coach Scotty Walden is going to do with the football program that Billy Gillespie did with the basketball team. Worst to first. Let's go. Hashtag reppin' from Colorado now. Hashtag tweet streak every game.
Nice.
Hashtag Sal is my pal. There you go. Brock is my OG. I forgot to read that.
There we go, yeah.
Good stuff, man. Hey, as we start winding things down, guys, let's go over to some awards here, and then we'll wrap this up. And then we'll get some final thoughts ahead of Oregon. That's obviously the big game that everybody's looking to. For the player of the game, this is brought to you by Timothy Cantrell. Big shout out to him, one of the top realtors you're going to find here in West El Paso. Sal, let's give it to Otis Frazier III. He had 11 points, 10 boards, and he's played great basketball over the last couple weeks. 21 minutes tonight for Otis Frazier, scoring and grabbing boards, including 7 on the offensive side. Let's go Otis Frazier as the player of the game, and that's brought to you by Timothy Cantrell. In fact, Timothy Cantrell, if you're looking to buy or sell your home, he is your trusted real estate agent with over 20 years of experience. He's got a vast knowledge, unwavering dedication, and valuable resources. He's here to make your real estate dreams come true. Timothy Cantrell, selling the dream one property at a time. You can follow him on Instagram at Timothy Realtor for the latest listings and tips, and check him out and give him a call, 915-204-8441 via call or text 915-204-8441. That is Timothy Cantrell, our sponsor of the Player of the Game Award. Next up, it's our hot hand of the game. This is brought to you by Wind Supply El Paso. Wind Supply El Paso, by the way, it's starting to get cool. They've got Champion Furnaces. If you want to locate your nearest Champion Furnace, go online, find a dealer tab at windsupplyelpaso.com. They always bring us the hot hand of the game, whether it's UTEP football or UTEP men's basketball. And in this one, let's go Zid Powell. 14 points, 6 boards, and in this one, 0 turnovers for Zid Powell. A hot hand, and he did not cough up any turnovers in this one in 20 minutes of action. Zid Powell getting the hot hand of the game. Turning the page, it's Oregon, Saturday night, 7 o'clock in Eugene. Oregon has wins this year over Georgia, Montana, Tennessee State, Florida A&M, and Michigan. They have 2 losses this year, one to Santa Clara and one to Alabama. How close is UTEP to Alabama? Come on. No. Not close at all. But how close are they to Santa Clara? That's a good question. They probably are maybe on par with that group. Maybe not right there, but maybe a little bit closer. And I'd say this, for UTEP, Do they have a chance this weekend? Yes, because their defense can travel and their defense can play great, but they're going to need to play their best game that we've seen all season long. And I think the upside for this team is there, but they also are coming off 3 straight losses. Tonight's game, it's the get-right game, but how valid is it is to be left to be kind of questioned. I want to know how they respond against Abilene Christian, and that's where we can really assess more on this team. Sal, you give me your thoughts heading into Oregon on Saturday.
I want to see them take good care of the ball and be fluid on offense. Now, I'm not going in there, or I'm not expecting them to go in there and drop 80, drop 90, but I don't want to see them look shaken up on offense. I want to see them have an answer for whenever Oregon's able to make some adjustments or tip some passes. How are they going to respond if the offense is disrupted a bit? Is that going to distract you from your original game plan, or just disrupt your entire flow of the entire game? So that's what I want to see.
Yeah, good point. Alberto, let's go to you. What do you want to see from this team on Saturday against Oregon?
I don't want to see the ball stick as much as it's been sticking sometimes, and also just intensity, play to the end. Yeah, you're not expected to win, but go in there, compete till the end. I don't want to see any bad looks. I don't want to see anything that I'm like, man, I didn't like how that looked, or I don't like how I don't want to do any of that this early, especially in the season. So that's what I want to see, just intensity, take care of the ball, like Sal said, and just play hard till the end.
Good stuff. Let me ask you this, Alberto. Give me the latest, or give me the preview. UTEP Clemson. It's coming up Wednesday, and it's a big matchup that everybody should be excited about.
Yeah, huge matchup. It's arguably, I'd say, the biggest UTEP athletics event this year. I can't think of another one that's any bigger.
Interesting. Good one. I think that's pretty valid. I can't think of any other ones either.
Right? It's just like postseason ball. Winner takes it all, and the community has an opportunity to go in there and make themselves extremely felt, right? You can fill it up with 3,000 plus, get really loud when they're serving and everything. So it's a unique opportunity to watch some good postseason volleyball and hopefully see the girls succeed.
Yeah, let's see what happens. I'm excited. Clemson's coming to town. NVIC is the tournament, and the Miners playing some postseason volleyball action coming up Wednesday at Memorial Gym. Hey, that's going to do it for us here on Miner Talk. Appreciate everybody chiming in. Appreciate everybody's thoughts on the coach or on everything else when it comes to basketball. If you've missed any of Miner Talk, check us out on demand, 600 ESPN El Paso podcasts, and also check us out online at 600ESPNElPaso.com. For Sal Montes, for Alberto Reta, I'm Adrian Broadus saying so long and thanks for listening to Miner Talk, brought to you by the Oscar Arieta Agency. More coming up this weekend here on 600 ESPN El Paso.